Oh, that was so good though. I forgot how much I love those poems.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for doing that one with me. That was fun.
Oh, it was good. And it was nice to see how it was, because even when I was reading it, I'm so bad at those footnote things. I just skip over them whenever I read.
Oh, actually, I was like, that was inspired by, have you seen Jane the Virgin?
Yes!
And Sean is reviewing my book for Uplift, and he asked for a list of references. I've got to tell him about that one, because there are so many things that inspire everything, and then you just forget. Yeah.
Because that's... I'll try and do it so that it's all...
Oh!
Round.
Bounding ball of energy.
He is. Welcome everyone back to the third part and final part of our video and interview series. So we've just got some more questions. I think some of them we answered, but we'll see how we feel about them and things like that. And I especially loved your reading.
Thank you.
So amazing. Crowd went wild.
Me
and the dog.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So, to start off, how do you go about writing a poem? What is your process?
Yeah, like I did speak to like the note taking, I guess like a general tip is just always have something to take notes on.
Yeah.
Because you never know what could come in handy. The 5 senses, utilizing the 5 senses is a big one, because while poetry can be very abstract, you need that contrast of concrete things as well. So like concrete images. Yeah, like experimenting. I do play around with shape. There is one poem, the memoration one, that kind of looks like a memoration, which plays around with the line length, and a little bit of white space in the middle there. And titles as framing devices, I really like that. Like, I love titles that give context, or like name a place, for example, but it's never mentioned explicitly in the poem. That's a fun one.
Even you were talking before about how you did like a poem about like the cafe, and it was just like the things you heard in the cafe, and then the title.
The title is the context. What other? I don't use rhyme very intentionally. Like I'll intuitively and subconsciously I'll have end rhymes and rhymes inside the lines, and I set rules for myself, as I mentioned, with like stanza length, line length, number of lines. Less so with syllables. I find that to be more intuitive. I'll definitely read my poems aloud many times to myself. Sound, like the sonic quality. Hopefully when I read, you could hear either repetition of sounds, like consonants, to mimic the way the water sounds against like the surface, the pool deck. What else? I think that's in German.
What are your rules for like how long something can be?
Well, it depends on each poem. So, for example, there are some, like I've just opened randomly to When the Stars Explode. So all of my stanzas here are 4 lines, and they're pretty even in length, like on the page. Because that is quite a traditional structure in terms of sentence length. Like I've got uppercase, sentence case, punctuation, so it's a bit more traditional and just more of like a narrative, I would say. Whereas something a bit more, like this one I've opened to Ode to Lake Kawana, uses a lot more white space and kind of distills the thoughts, because it's not like confronting, but it's a little more like a darker memory, I guess. So I kind of keep the thought as simple as I can, have it like as isolated as I can on the page, and like using white space in this section. Whereas I think there's a good example of a sprawling one. Is that one you're talking about? Cusped, which sprawls across the page and uses white space a lot, and the forward slashes. Because to kind of visually see the cusp of things, and duplicity and duality is a big common like running theme through the collection.
Okay, so with editing, so you've basically spoken about that a bit in like your process of like you just kind of have fun, and then you like it's a very rigorous like editing process. But do your poems tend to get like longer or shorter or any other little things?
That's a great question too. Yeah, I think editing is the first draft is the quickest thing about a poem. Well, sometimes.
No, I find that in writing too. First draft and then editing for years.
Yes, literally. Like honestly, I could have kept editing this for many more rounds of editing, but you need to know when to like just let it sit, let it live. But my poems get, I want to say, shorter for the most part, because it's like distilling it down to like its purest form and cutting the fat, cutting like anything you don't really need, like bridging syntax that isn't really adding anything. Although sometimes, the only times my poems get longer is probably if I come back to it after a long time and I realize that there's like a draft of a thing that I'm like, oh, that would actually make sense combined in that poem, or if I learn new things and I realize it would add to the meaning of the poem, perhaps.
No, I like that. I like that. In that, this is more a personal question, because I've been editing the same book for like 10 years now. When do you know when to stop?
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have stopped if it weren't for Michael. I would have kept going, but like before I sent this anywhere, I don't know, I think you like have to just
rip the band-aid off.
You have to, I think like if it's not broken, don't fix it is a good mantra to have.
That's a good one.
Like if it's, just like stop, because then if you edit it so much and it just loses its initial meaning and like integrity, and then you're like, why did I even write this in the first place? Like,
right, yeah. No, I feel that. I think that's a good one to have. I like that, and having your editor be able to help you too.
Yeah,
very
have
nice
advice from other people, like get other sets of eyes on it. Yeah,
I like that.
Sure.
Okay, another question. I feel like this sometimes when you're writing a work, especially this, which is very like memoir based, which even some people brought up, and with poetry they often refer to it as like the speaker, but sometimes it's she or sometimes it's Svetlana. How do you go about feeling about that? And like it's a very memoir, personal, but they still don't know who you are, kind of.
It's so interesting, and we all place our assumptions when we read other work. Well, I do. Like, I often read poetry as the speaker being the poet, although it's not always the case. And like, I would say, because this is so memory based and very not 100%, but very autobiographical, like it is kind of intended to be at least a version of me. It's not like me. I'm not always like this.
No, exactly. That's kind of
So I feel like that's fine. That's kind of what it's intended. But there are definitely poems and poets who I feel like it's pretty clear when they're speaking as someone else. Like, not a poet, but the first example that comes to head is Taylor Swift. Like, especially from folklore onwards, and she made it pretty clear. Well, she's a little bit more well known than like we are.
just a little bit.
So people would infer a lot of what she's saying. So she kind of wanted to separate herself, but even then, people are still reading it and assuming.
Exactly, that's so true.
That's what it is.
Like
Shastra Deo, local Brisbane poet, amazing, by the way.
Yes, very.
Like both of her collections actually. Like, I definitely didn't read it as her, even though I know there are definitely elements of her in there. But, like, her most recent one, The Exclusion Zone, is kind of like a choose your own adventure, like gaming. So
I like it, But it's very, like almost sci-fi in, like, the experience of it.
So it makes you, the reader, be the speaker. So that's fun, too.
Yeah. I like those ones, like, when she's, like, reading it aloud, and it's... like audience participation. I thought that was very interesting. Such a cool concept.
But I think like even if I am the speaker, like I'll definitely change things and embellish, of course, but just change things if they need to serve the poem. Like not everything is here. It's exactly like what happened, sort of thing.
It's like make the imagery more or like
the priorities.
Take creative license.
The priority is not like historical accuracy. It's like the feeling that it hopefully evokes in the reader.
Cool. When do you know that you've written something good?
I don't. Hardly ever. No, I think. I don't know about good, but like worthwhile perhaps is like valuable perhaps is a better word, like as long as I think
like something that's worth continuing and editing. And
I think if I come back to it after a while and then I still see like value in it and I don't absolutely hate it and cringe at it, which kind of is rarer. It's less common than the alternative. But I think if it makes me yeah, I think it's all about how it feels. Yeah,
exactly.
as corny as that sounds.
I like it. What's comparing from where you first got published and how did that happen to like now? What would you think about your journey, like your old self?
Yeah, so unfortunately my first published poems are out there. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but like they're out there.
You don't want people to find them?
No, I think they're pretty easy to find though, to be honest.
Probably.
It is very cringe, but I remember being really excited that and it was like, this is saying something about the quality of the work, but it's like, it was the first place that I submitted to and it was accepted. But, sorry, that's not saying something, that's the opposite of what I wanted to say. It was the first place that I submitted to and they were accepted and I was like, whoa, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But I definitely wouldn't write poetry like that now. I think I actually wrote those poems or drafted them in uni for like not even an assignment, just like a class workshop or something.
Yeah.
So I think like it's special in that sense and like I'm proud of myself.
You're not putting it up on the wall anytime soon. This was my first publication.
No. But I'm really proud that I stuck with it and like have learned and taught myself so much and like went out and read a lot of different kind of poetry and that's how I've hopefully developed as a poet. I think it's a good sign actually if you look back at your work and cringe, it means you've improved and grown.
That's nice. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any recommendations for others out there looking to submit work to especially prizes and publications? Any tips or tricks?
In terms of like the process of submitting or
just like what they could be like looking for or just anything you found or even your mentality around it.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel like sharing.
I think like for poetry specifically as well, if they're looking for submission packets, always like send up to the pack. Like if you can send 3, send 3. Don't send 1 because you never know what they're gonna like. Like for me personally, it's usually the one that I think the least of that gets published. So it just proves that everyone's
like such a poetry thing because Ray says that as well.
Yes, yeah, it's very true.
I don't find that with like prose, but poetry apparently that's the thing.
I kind of agree to be honest. I think if you can, it's helpful to have like some friends read over your work. Probably double checking like your bio and cover letters because it's so embarrassing and I've done this too many times, but like I'll send it and then I'll realize there's been a massive mistake in the cover letter, or like the wrong name or something really embarrassing like that. So I would double check that. Yeah, read aloud, read your submissions aloud. Simple things like sticking to the guidelines. Like it sounds so obvious, but so many submit it. As speaking as the editor of Submit Lit Back, so many people like it's quite obvious if you haven't read the guidelines, which like it's fine. Everyone's got busy lives, but it's just probably it's like the first impression is that you probably don't know don't care that much about a specific publication. And also as a submitter and a writer myself, like I'm only really sending my work to places that actually want to see it published. Like I don't just send it everywhere. Like I'm pretty selective because it's part of building your own brand as well.
I keep forgetting about covers too because most magazines don't ask for them at all.
Cover letters,
cover letters and things like that. Do you find that you manage to like sneak it in with the submission and you always do a cover letter or
so I don't put it in the actual document that I'm submitting, but if it's in like the submittable form or whatever email, I'll just say a few words like thank them for their time, but I don't think most places don't want a lengthy one. They just and also just try and keep it fun. I think like at the end of the day, editors are reading a lot of submissions. Like, if you put something fun and lighthearted in there, it'll brighten up their day a little bit, if anything. Nice. Yeah.
Now, you also run your own literary magazine. This segues perfectly. Swim Meet Lit Mag, which Jamie and I spoke about in the Holy Grail Publishing. Do you mind talking us through running a magazine and, like, what's that like?
Yeah, it's fun. It's a hobby. It's totally volunteer. Like I don't gain anything out of it except helping emerging creatives hopefully build a little bit of a platform. But I love it because, so many surprising things come your way and so many good discoveries. But initially I started it just because I was an emerging, and still am an emerging writer, and I wanted more avenues of publication that were like a bit more chill and not so highbrow. Like a lot of our local stuff is pretty exclusive, which is really cool, and it speaks to our high caliber of arts, but can be intimidating for emerging creatives. So I wanted something a little more accessible and approachable, but it's been really fun. I've met so many cool people. I've gotten to know and build a network and my own community, and community is so important, and I cannot stress that enough. Like, it's such a solitary thing that we do. Yeah. And it feels like you're alone out there speaking into the void.
No, it is.
And I want to connect people. Like I said, it's all about empathy and connecting with people. But it's also a lot of work to do on your own, and I've gotten less and less frequent with it just because life outside still continues and gets busier, but I still want to commit to doing that and doing a good job of it when I can. Like, it's to do it properly, like, it takes a lot of time and focus to like sit with each work, and as a writer you want your work to be considered with the same weight and time. So that's what I want to do as well.
Absolutely. What's some of the things that you had to get that you would like, how do you even begin running your own literary magazine? Was it like a certain, like, I know you have an Instagram, so that was like a big part, I'm sure, and then like forms, and like what do you need to start your own magazine?
Yeah,
if somebody was interested.
It depends on how you want to do it. Mine is just online. I think that keeps it really, hopefully, easily accessible to everyone. It's free. That was an important part because I actually want people to read the work that I get submitted, that I get sent. What I did was, what did I do? I think I had a lot of notes and ideas on like different formats and ways to do it. There's lots of grants and funding you can apply for. I decided to go the crowdfunding way, so based on donations, which are so generous and so appreciated, and keep my website running, my inbox running, and the ability to pay contributors, which is
huge.
Yeah,
that's
very
massive.
important.
Be able to pay contributors is really cool.
Yeah, there's not enough of that, which there's many reasons why, but I just want something out there local that emerging writers can get not only monetary compensation, but a little bit of an audience as well. So I did the website, the email, the Instagram, and the Google Forms. What else? I think that's like mainly the practical stuff, and like the subscriber email, MailChimp. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's a lot, but that's...
Yeah, and like I guess things like cover art, I was really fortunate to have some really cool friends. M. Heisman is a big one who has done like 3 issues, I think, now of cover art.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and someone I met at uni as well, so that's really cool. Otherwise, it's just submit as art, and I ask if they would like it as the cover art. Yeah,
that's so cool. Have you found at all that like running your own literary magazine has like given you, like you spoke about like the community that it's connected you to and things like that, but is there other things like that you've like benefited from? Yeah,
the biggest, well, as a writer, I think the biggest thing is that it's helped me edit my own work with a more subjective eye, like being able to separate myself from like every niche little thought that I know, like what everything means behind everything, and that I hope that like trust the reader to infer, but also like resist the urge to over explain. So being a bit more subjective and reading it as an outsider is a big one for sure. And it's helped me a lot more with structural editing because like I knew about it obviously and did a lot of it through my degree and a few internships and working with Voiceworks, but like in practice and doing it on your own without other people to bounce off has actually been the best way to learn how to do it, I would say, and to apply it to my own work as well. Yeah. And being like editor-in-chief sort of thing of this magazine that you've created is pretty cool. Like, that's something to put on a resume, you know, on a CV. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. I gotta stop saying I like that anyway. I like that you like all this stuff. Thank you. Oh, so I know it's also bad, but then like the part of that is like accepting, but then also you've got
rejections and stuff like that, how do you go through that? How do you manage that? And like, you said no, people, like, you've rejected me.
What we called a rejection, I think it was Felicity Plunkett who in her workshop was pointed out how interesting the language we use around like submission, rejection, like why are we using this kind of
you
language?
like at the moment I'm like looking for an agent and it's like seeking representation.
Yes.
You want someone to champion your work. Like it's, I didn't even think about it at one point, but I was speaking to a non-writer and they were like, "You're gonna get a champion?" I was like, "That's so cool."
Yeah. Hell yeah. No, rejections are not easy, but unfortunately, like, statistically, there are way more rejections than acceptances just because of the number of submissions and how much space is available to publish, which is unfortunate. And I've learned this as a writer and an editor, like, honestly, a lot of the time you get rejected, it's not because your work isn't good enough, it's just that it doesn't fit. Like it's not the standard of work, it's perhaps the type of work, if that makes sense. And it's like so hard to understand and you never know what that type will be. So the best advice is just to keep submitting. But anyway, that was not the question. And how do I
no, that's perfect. We can segue to that. But I know exactly what you mean, and sometimes it is really hard, like even now being, I think you don't understand it until you're on the other side of it. Like doing QT, the salon and things like that, where it's like you're creating an event, especially, and like in your case it's like you're creating a magazine, and half the time it's like you can't help but know how the works play off each other, and you never think about it as like a submitter. You're just like the best works will get in, but it's not how creating a work works. Like even in your book, it's like all of the poems have to, like, there has to be a flow, there has to be a reason, there has to be like an overarching story of like start with happiness, have some stuff in the middle, end on like a lighter note. Like there's so much of that. So sometimes you have like a great piece, but you know that it wouldn't benefit within your magazine or within your event because it's not going to be supported by what like the theme is or like the other contributors and like all this kind of stuff. And it's just, it's so interesting in those like cases that you'd never think about it as
I think
submitter.
Like while the hardest part of editing and rejecting is when you whittle it down to your shortlist, which are all pretty like usually very high quality works, but you have to reject the ones like really good works because they don't speak to each other maybe. However, I think that's also like the more nuanced and really fun and intriguing part of editing or curating.
Exactly,
I think there's a really good article, it might be on Chill Subs, which is a great submitting resource, about like why this journal isn't calling it submitting anymore but curating, which is what it is. It's curating.
See, and that's exactly
good language, much more positive language that we can
What do they call it? Because you were saying that about as well, like what's the language you use around like rejections and like next time.
Like,
that's good. Oh, so you were saying about like how many rejections do you think you've gotten, or like, you know,
that I've gotten?
Try again next time.
My gosh,
till this point,
definitely hundreds. Like I don't know. I don't have an exact number. I don't know how, to be honest. I delete them. Like I'm like, cool, delete, move on, and try again next time. Like I don't have time to sit with that, I suppose, and there's no point. Like I've definitely had a few really, really tough ones, but for the most part I delete, move on, don't count them. But
no, I feel you. I was just thinking about it the other day where I was like, I'm barreling towards 100, and like it's exciting, you know. You want I think you can kind of celebrate the rejections as much as the acceptances, because it's like you're still making work, you've still put something out there, you've still gone for it, and you may as well. I think you feel so much worse if you don't submit and don't like go for it, because you're like, what if? So if at least you send something, you're like, I tried. So but I think I've got like I think I'm at 80 maybe. Ooh. Like just thinking about it, I'm like so close.
You should throw a party. You should make a cake when you get to 100.
Like I'm just trying to, like, it's not like specific at all, but I know I had like 30 rejections under my belt from like 5 years ago when I tried to get my book out to like agents and things, but it was horrible. So I had like 30 underneath my belt just starting into uni and things like that.
I think that's something to boast about. Going into uni, like, with rejections, I don't think many people start uni like that. You're ahead of the game.
Thank you. It's nice, but I love hearing you two. You're like, at least 100.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's not, I think that's something you don't realise when you're starting out, too, that you're going to get, like, in the hundreds if you're really pursuing this.
And you only see other people's acceptances. You don't see their rejections, although I've noticed a few of, like, my writer friends sharing on Instagram, like, their screenshots of their rejection letters. There's a writer in WA, Daniel Gray, who shares his, and I love that. And then someone actually shared one of my that I sent as the editor, who's sharing, like, rejections from different magazines. But
that's so cool.
Look, I think I try to be quite nice, and I hope I try to be quite nice and encouraging, because I want people to keep
send something as well, like, actually let them know that, like, hey, sorry you didn't get in, I'd love it if you submitted next time, you know, like, because sometimes a lot of the time they just ghost you and you just don't hear anything back. And that's,
which I get it, but also, like, it's like with art, and I read this in some poem, but it's like this is a very bad paraphrasing, but it feels like you should spend as much time looking at a piece of work as the artist spent making it. And I feel like the same should be true of writing. Like, so much time and effort goes into it, and I feel like we should be equal in how much time we give.
Yeah.
Well, that might not be practical, but you know, the idea.
10 years, guys.
Per poem.
Exactly. Oh, but no, I like that. How do you find out about, like, opportunities and things like that you've, like, how did you even hear about the big poetry prizes? And
I think staying connected on social media is obviously a big one, and, like, being subscribed to newsletters like Queensland Writers Centre,
Uplift,
because I think, like, Uplift is a great one. Chill Subs, I mentioned, it's an international one, but they do Australian ones as well. And a lot of just, like, magazines, like, on Swim Meets mail out, I'll include opportunities, but I don't flag people. So. A lot of, like, different organisations will share their resources, and Submittable also has, like, a discover page, and you can do different filters. So see if you need to pay to submit, or if they pay contributors and all that kind of thing.
I like that. I've never done that before. I should actually check that out. And I do love the Pen and Pixel by Queensland Writers Centre that you mentioned, and at the back of the Writers Queensland magazine, they always have, like, a whole heap of opportunities. But and Uplift by Ray White has.
They know every
poetry
single event, submission, prize in the country, like, honestly.
Okay, what was it like being on the editorial committee of Voiceworks magazine? And I don't know when I'll get this out, but I know they're looking for editorial members at the moment. But,
that was so fun. I wish I could have been more involved. Being in Brisbane, I was all virtual, so they do a weekly meeting on or when I was on Edcom, a weekly meeting, like, on Google Meet or whatever, and the discussions that come out of that are so fun and interesting and layered and nuanced. And then the way that they do it, so again, just speaking to, like, what gets accepted and rejected, because Voiceworks is not only for emerging writers but emerging editors, it's to develop editorial skills. We often, a lot of us would pick works that we wanted to edit rather than works that were good. Because that could be a really polished piece of work, but there's just not as much that perhaps we could do with it, or it wasn't to the theme. So we would pick works, so we had teams for, like, poetry, a team for fiction, creative non-fic, visual art, or comics. So we'd pick things as a team that we thought suited the theme, and individually that we actually wanted to edit, which is a really cool way of going about it.
Yeah, I've never heard that before, because obviously, like, as a writer, you want to just have your work as polished as possible. But as an editor, like, that's really interesting. And being an editor of a young under-25s magazine that's all about encouraging new emerging voices, and, like, the editorial process is so huge, which is lovely. Like, I know Jamie Colley said that she went through, like, 3 rounds of edits sort of thing with the Voiceworks editorial staff, and it was, like, that was the piece that she then went on to submit to, like, a competition and won a big prize.
Yeah.
Which is so cool. Yeah. So,
Voiceworks, honestly, I cannot thank enough for as a writer, I was published in 3 issues, and each time the editorial process, still to this day, is the best, most thorough editorial work I've ever had with a journal. Because it's so focused on the editorial skills. So it's very, very thorough. I think I got to like 14 versions. Genuinely had 3. Well,
it's probably more than that, sorry.
Yeah, I had like a 14 back and forth, but I loved it, and I know the editor did too. And it's the communication is just so thorough, so like attentive and considerate and compassionate, and everyone is just so nice and really passionate about what they do, because none of us got paid for it, and just doing it because we really wanted to learn. And it's such a supportive team, like very like-minded individuals, similar age, and occasionally like we'd try to organize meetups. So I made a really good friend in Linley Wan, who was on the EdCom with me at the time as well, because there were not many of us Brisbane folk on EdCom then. There are a few more now, but and if you are based in Melbourne, it's at the Wheeler Centre, so you would definitely get to hang out in person and do all that sort of fun stuff.
No, I love that. I also just pulled that number out of my... I won't use the word.
Embarrassing. I was 14.
No, I think it might have been up there, but I was like, that's too insane a number. It was like 3 is crazy.
Also, like, don't let that deter you. Not everyone gets 14 versions, and it could be like pretty minor tweaks and some of them.
Yeah, it's just like a back and forth, like conversation too. Like,
it's also the most collaborative editorial process.
The dog just did a big snore.
Voiceworks is definitely the most collaborative editing that I've ever been part of.
I love that. When did you start really like enjoying reading poetry?
Oh, that's good. I think when I started reading it, I wouldn't say I enjoyed it. I like didn't get it. And then I was like, wait, I don't have to get it. I just have to feel it. That sounds so corny. But I think I remember reading like Walt Whitman pretty early on, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like a deep connection for me personally. And that was like in year 12 when I was first started playing around, like trying to write my own poetry. I would say I first started enjoying reading it actually quite recently, like maybe in the last 5 years, like not that long. Not that long, because I didn't know what type of poetry I liked, which I remember being told in uni, and I was like, what does that mean? And you just have to read broadly. And contemporary poetry, each to their own, but I would recommend reading contemporary poetry. Read broadly, but because everyone tends to begin with the classics, which are helpful to kind of form your knowledge of the foundations of poetry, but it's not super relevant, well, at least to me and my practice and how I approach poetry. Yeah. No,
I like that. Telling people like, oh, I'm a writer. They're like, oh, so you've read Crime and Punishment and all these classics. And it's like, well, no, actually I'm writing for this century. Yeah. So I want to be able to like read widely like the audience that I'm writing for. Okay, so what would you classify your like type of reading that you love within poetry?
Within poetry, honestly, I love reading local, as like Australian poets, contemporary work. I find that I do read a bit of American poetry, but I find there's like, I've heard a term like the MFA effect, or there's definitely like affectations that and I'm sure like other countries would say the same about Australian poetry, that we have like our own like affects and things, but it's just like there's a little barrier that I probably don't quite connect with as deeply, because it's not like a lived experience. But I do have great respect for all poets of all backgrounds. But my favorite poets that I like to read are like definitely lyrical poetry. Like Shastra Dare is definitely one of my favorite poets. Sarah Holland Batt. I love Ray's work. Ella Jeffrey. I could go on. Anna Jacobson. A lot of local poets. Yeah.
I really like that, because the next question is like what are some like poems or poets or like lines even that you can think of that's just like, you know, we were talking before about like how do you make your work stick, but that have like really stuck with you.
Yeah. I will say actually Louise Glick, who is not Australian, but just so poignant and potent, and like it just like hits you, and like it feels like she's had the thoughts that that I'm having. Phoebe Bridgers, who's not a poet, but like same effect. And I just want to shout out every Phoebe Bridgers project, like Better Oblivion Community Center and Boy Genius as well. Maggie Smith, author of Goldenrod. But yeah, Sarah Helen Batt's The Jaguar, because it was so... I think that's probably a little bit of an influence in, like, to my book, because it's so much about her father, and it's very autobiographical and addressing, like, the reader or a second person a lot. Like, that impacted me. Yeah.
The Jaguar is incredible.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, last question. You're working on a book now. Tell us about that.
Yes, I am working on a novel, which to be honest, I've probably been working on it longer than I've been working on this, but I didn't know it at the time. So I attended, this was Brisbane Writers Festival 2021. Tracy Leanne was doing a talk on her book, All That's Left Unsaid. And I think something she said really resonated with me, and it was that, so her book is written in these chapters that are almost different perspectives, or like could almost be standalone short stories. And she said that kind of came about as from actually writing a lot of different short stories that other people pointed out and were like, oh, is this like a collection? Like, there's definitely some common themes here. And she was like, yeah, you know what, maybe I should just write a novel. So that's kind of similar to what how I started writing this as a novel. It was a lot of like the poems in here, some short stories and random memoir fragments that I was writing around it that are all speaking to the same experience and like themes. But I didn't actually sit down and try and collate it until the Ritual Prize opened for entries in 2022 or 3?
True.
23. And
are you going to submit to it this year?
Well, I don't have any plans to, no, but you guys, everyone else should. But yeah, I was like, I'm just going to try and I'm going to do 3 chapters of something. I can do that. And I collated all the stuff. And because it was from different formats, it ended up being a hybrid. So it's a hybrid, and it's developed and evolved since I submitted it to the Ritual. But yeah, that's how it started.
So hybrid in what sense?
Poetry and prose, but also maybe a little bit more experimental than that. We'll see.
Ooh, that sounds really cool. And that will focus more on your mum?
Yeah. So this is like my dad book. That's my mum book, but it's also a lot more fictionalized than the poetry, because again, like at the end of the day, the story that I'm trying to tell is more important than historical accuracy. And as it's evolved, like I realized there's so much I can do with like additional characters and plot.
And having a book too, there's like so much more you can kind of do with that.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been so nice having this. Yeah, I'll send it all to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so much fun, and I loved our guest.
Yeah.
On the floor, asleep.
Fast asleep. Oh, bye. Menace at the start, but we'll see how everything goes. Some bloopers, guys. Well, thank you so much. See you next time. Like, comment, subscribe. Buddy, round, buddy, round. No, I know you love scrunchies, but it's
Yeah, I've noticed that. I might take it off. Put it off.
oh, this
No more scrunchy.
round.